Wow, this is the first time I've ever made a video and it is pretty freaking awkward. Hello everybody, my name is Miranda. I was recently accepted into Peace Corps. As of September 2017, that's when I received my invitee letter, which was pretty exciting. The purpose of this video is to explain the process of applying, getting cleared, being accepted or invited, I should say, the interview process. When I applied, I didn't realize how much went into the application process, and it is extensive. So my goal is to share with you a few steps that I had to take and things I wish I would have done differently, where I'm at now and all of that. So it might be lengthy because it was a lengthy process, but I will see what's necessary to keep and what's not. So as you can see, I'm very excited. I'm very proud to be serving for Peace Corps. I was accepted into the rural, I've had a very hard time saying that word, a rural health educator stationed in Belize. And I specifically applied for that trip. So with the Peace Corps application, you can apply generally, and they can then place you based on your best fit, based on your resume and your experience. However, I was completing my bachelor's degree, so I was pretty picky about my departure time as well as the place. I have always dreamed of traveling to Central and South America, and my goal with looking through the Peace Corps projects was to find some place in that area that I qualified for. So it was roughly July when I started browsing and then submitted my application, and all I had to do was go on to the peacecorps.gov website and look at, I first just browsed Peace Corps' mission and their history, and there's been so much ups and downs in the media, so I felt like doing some research on my own part was necessary. So I did look up both the good that Peace Corps lists and the bad that the media has shared as well, which I recommend any volunteer do. I don't want anybody to go in naive to what they're being exposed to. I think it's really important to be realistic about what Peace Corps consists of. There's a lot more that goes into volunteering your time. You're volunteering your mentality, your emotions, your physical health. I always recommend that people do all the research necessary to make sure that it's a good fit for you. So when I was browsing the website, I looked first for the furthest out trip, and then my next step was to look for countries of choice. Narrowing it down to those two preferences, I actually stumbled on the Belize trip almost immediately. It was the last trip they had listed for their timeline, and it was in Belize. So things do happen for a reason. This was one of those moments that I felt that. So I opened the application several times before I decided to go through and actually fill out the application. That took me roughly an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It goes a lot into your background, your education, your work history, not to the extent of a resume, but just generally, and then an essay. And the essay was a minimum of 500 words. The essay consisted of why you want to apply for Peace Corps, your sole inspiration, which is very hard to sum up. You do receive immediate feedback that your application has been submitted successfully, and then the next step is to fill out a health history form, which I received with my confirmation of receipt. And the purpose of that is they clearly state that they cannot successfully support all health conditions in all of these rural countries. So they want to make sure that whatever medications that you require or any illnesses that you're dealing with can be supported medicinally, as well as just if there is an emergency. So unfortunately, there are some volunteers that get turned down because of health conditions, and that's just because if something happens with your health that they were aware of, they could be held accountable for not completely protecting you. They make that very clear in the beginning. Like I said, you get that health history form almost automatically, and they will not even consider your application until they've reviewed that health history form. Within a couple of days, I received a notice saying they were reviewing my application. Very exciting moment. About 2 weeks later, I received an email that they were still reviewing my application and just gave me a brief status of my application, as well as some additional information about the country I applied for, as I was able to see and confirm that that trip was a good fit for me. And then a couple of days later, I received an invite for an interview. In the email inviting me for the interview, they told me how to secure my spot. It is a Skype interview because their headquarters are not in Denver, so the interview took place over Skype, and they just gave you preparation pointers. Dress professionally. Luckily, it was a Skype interview, so my top half looked very professional. They give you an outline of what the interview structure is going to be like and some points to focus on, which I thought was extremely helpful. As far as the interview goes, the topics that they were going to be discussing were given me in a bullet point form and gave me something to focus on. I won't go into my answers because then this video would probably end up as long as the interview itself, which was 3 hours. So we're not gonna go into the answers, but these are just some concepts that they ask you about. The bullet points of focus were my experience with various cultures, my experience working in an unstructured environment, fulfilling a difficult commitment, failing an attempted goal, and my feelings about being away from family, significant other, and friends. Of the 5 bullet points, the questions had about 3 sub-questions, so they were pretty lengthy discussions with me and my interviewer. And it was almost uncomfortable because it's not a comfortable conversation. They are taking notes, they're writing down your answers. So you just remain professional and honest. It's important that you're very honest with yourself and with them, because the last thing you want to do is answer something the way you think it should be answered and put yourself in a situation that you later learn is not a good fit for you. And I had to come to terms with that when I was filling out the applications. She brought up some situations that I didn't consider. One of them being gender roles, where women take care of the children, they're cooking, cleaning, and very domesticated, which isn't anything foreign to me. With my background, that's not something uncommon, but it was something to discuss. And then she brought up to me another important concept that I had yet really thought about, but that I would be surrounded by people 24/7. Basically, I'll have a host family, I'll be working in the community. However, there will be moments of loneliness that I don't expect. One thing she did mention was that sense of humor. A lot of people struggle because sense of humor is very different in other countries. My sarcastic personality, I hope, can translate into another culture. And then 3 other important topics that I think are interesting to consider. Uncommon foods. There aren't vegan, gluten-free diets in this area. There's a lack of food, so what you get is what you get. Living in poor living conditions, so maybe not showering every day, twice a day. And then one more thing she brought up is modifying your appearance. The country I'm serving in is pretty conservative, so I won't be able to wear my favorite yoga pants. No short shorts, no short dresses. You need to have your shoulders covered, no cleavage. So altering your appearance in a sense that's respectful to the culture. So after the interview, I was to submit my references. I needed 2 references. I chose a really good friend of mine that I've known for years and my previous boss. I feel like they've been able to see me through some hardship and help guide me through some tough times, and they would be appropriate references. I was thrilled to see my invite letter in my inbox in September. So once that was sent to me, there was quite a few steps that I needed to then take. One of them being to accept the invitation within 3 days. So within those 3 days, I spoke with my family, I spoke with my boyfriend, and came to the decision that I was gonna go. So I accepted my invite, and then my next steps were to submit my fingerprints via the card that they sent me for my legal clearance in the mail. So I went to the police station, did my fingerprints, mailed that, went to the post office to get a passport, which they cover. I've never had a passport, and they take care of any expense with the passport, and I won't receive it until I fly down to Florida and my cohort flies out together. So I haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait to hold it. And then I had to go through a very lengthy medical clearance. It was to be completed in about a 2-month time frame. I used every minute of that time frame. They get to know you inside and out, from head to toe, and it's very important that they do know those things about you. It took some time before I was notified that I was cleared, and then it wasn't until February that I had been cleared legally. So from the submission of that paperwork, it was quite a few months before I got the background check and everything cleared. So once I was completely cleared, all of my next steps for preparation began to unfold. To get registered for your online trainings, which take place before staging, to get connected on your PC Live, which just connects you to other volunteers. One of the final steps I had to do was submit an updated resume and an aspiration statement, and they just have you touch on various topics that help them narrow down where you're best fit, what your short-term goals are with Peace Corps and your long-term goals post Peace Corps are, and their goal is to best support those as well as support their mission. So with those submitted, I don't know what's going on with them right now. I just know that they have them, and we'll hear back later. This was all taking place online, and the first time I actually was able to see volunteers face to face was on April 22nd. I went to a meeting, they called it a Denver send-off. So it was past volunteers and future volunteers that gathered together and just discussed some experiences, what to expect, some tips on packing. My boyfriend and my parents came with me to support me with that step and to kind of get some of their questions answered. And it was just nice to actually see faces after having been virtually communicating with so many people. I'm a little over a month away from leaving, so I'm completing my online training and just taking care of some housekeeping tasks on my end. I think is the biggest step I'll have to take, is letting it all sink in. So that was my experience with the application process, and my goal is to keep up with these videos frequently, answer any questions, as well as share with you my experience in the Peace Corps. So thank you for watching, and if any questions arise or anything you want me to touch on, just leave it in the comments.